Hello and welcome to Rage Quit. My name is Jay. I hope you're doing very well today. And today I'm going to be talking about the question that may deliberately seem a little bit provocative, and that is 40k holding Wargaming back? And I know it might be a bit of a bold title or what have you, but I actually stand by it. And I think this might be the case because my main point in this video is it just doesn't feel like Wargaming right now, with 40k at the forefront of it, could really have the same kind of boom as that the other tabletop genres have had. Maybe we can look at Magic the Gathering, the Pokemon trading cards and all that kind of stuff. We can look at D&D, and we can look at board games. You know, the other sort of genres in this, the subgenres in the big genres, well, they are doing better, basically. And I think there's a few reasons for that. And I think 40k, the universe, the game itself, may actually be both a good thing and a bad thing, and it's the bad things obviously I'm talking about today. I'm not saying 40k should end, by the way, just for clarity. I'm just going to talk through why I think something might come along that really propels 40k in the future. So before I talk about that though, if at the end of this video you like the video, and I mean me talking about the video, not whether or not you agree or disagree with me, then please press like, few too many P's in that sentence. And if you're not subscribed to the channel and you're interested in wargaming as a whole, please do, as that really does help and I really would appreciate it. So let's talk about 40k. 40k, very briefly, it's the biggest game. People who don't know wargaming know 40k. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that's true. People who aren't familiar with wargaming will possibly have seen them on the store, like seeing the stores in the high street, in the towns and etc. People who don't know wargaming possibly will know 40k, which is big. Like, once that's how you get to that tipping point, right? Like, they're on the precipice of mainstream, if that makes sense. A little bit like D&D has become more mainstream, and I mean mainstream in a good way, not in a bad way. Basically, how is it holding us back? Like, I think that, it's not self-evident. That's not true, Jason. What it actually is it seems that wargaming is the smaller of the genres, and I just think something more friendly to more people could come along and actually push wargaming forward. So let's talk about why 40k, and why we're even having this discussion is because I'm saying specifically 40k may be part of the problem, right? And why might that be the case? Well, I think the 40k universe, whilst it is incredibly popular for a lot of people, I think it is also possibly off-putting. The grim dark universe of it, the nature of it, the like how it works, etc., how it looks, I think to some people will be off-putting. Don't get me wrong, them Space Marines look very nice. So for sure there's definitely some things in it that I think even people who aren't that interested in the universe like myself can latch onto, you know what I mean? Like, but I do think that the whole universe itself, its very nature of it, the emperors and the, I don't know what they call whatever Gilliman is, Primarchs, that kind of thing. Like, I don't know, I just feel like the story of it, whilst a lot of people out there will absolutely love it, I just feel like it's almost not neutral enough for a neutral person, if that makes sense. Like, I can happily play Star Wars Legion, probably Marvel Crisis Protocol when it comes out, Warcry, because they're non-offensive in a way to me, and I don't even necessarily like any of those things. I'm like a Trekkie kind of guy myself. Like, I'm not actually that into those universes, but I can play those games because they're neutral, they're inoffensive, they've got media, and media is one thing that GW are pumping some effort into, and I do actually really appreciate that. I think they're getting a TV show. Is that on the Eisen? Can't remember where the guy, it's a Inquisitor guy, I think. They're going to have comic books. They're teaming up with Marvel, which is an interesting development. They're going to have that animated TV show. They've got those books that are slightly aimed at kids, which people were up in arms about, but really, on the grand scheme of things, like, I think I did a video on my other channel, on my Star Wars Legion channel, a couple of years back, where I said, oh, Games Workshop need to have better media, and they're literally, that is what they're doing. They're doing it too late. It should have been 5 years ago, whatever, but they're pulling through. Like, they are going, not ham, but they're really upping their game for this media to get, and I think that's because they need to, because of the nature of the universe, right? Whether or not that, like, once you soften the universe a little bit by having it a little bit more approachable, whether or not that will then, like, be the tipping point where people can get into it who aren't really that bothered about it? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Personally, I think maybe not, just because, as I said, the very nature of the universe. I think you run the risk of, if you soften it down too much, you alienate the players you've already got. And, and if you can't cater to the players you've already got, you're never going to really acquire the new players. So there is a middle ground there that they're hoping to find. People are already annoyed with the kids' books. People who I don't necessarily agree with. In fact, anything I say, I strongly disagree. There's a universe big enough to do many different things in it. But, there's already been a bit of conflict, whether or not there should have been or whatever. There already has been a bit of conflict, right? And I also think, just like as a hobby, as a game, Games Workshop... it's not unique to Games Workshop, but there's just a lot of time investment needed for 40k. That's the same as other games, Star Wars Legion. There's a lot of time involved. You've got to sit there, you've got to grip things off sprues, glue them together, paint them, etc. That is one reason that Wargaming as a whole could be off-putting to some people, but there are ways around it. And I'm not talking pre-painted hero clicks, etc. For FFG, they're now going to a more sprue-like nature, but they've talked about how they openly want the balance between sprues and not having to clip a billion things off sprues. But then, the droids for the new factions apparently have been quite awkward because there's just so many little parts. So whether or not they've achieved their goal is debatable. And I think that as a whole, some people don't want to sit there and glue an arm to a hand to an arm to a body to a leg to a body, a head to a head. Some people just want to get up and play, right? And I feel like at the minute we've got two separate hobbies in the tabletop industry. Maybe this is something in another video we'll talk about. We've got the hobby, gaming. I'm on the gaming side of things, and I know some other people are, and I know some people like hobby, and that's fine, right? But really, we're not inclusive at the moment, I think, because you still need to do the hobby no matter what. Basically, it's almost unavoidable unless you're playing X-Wing or pre-painted chips or whatever. And I think for 40k specifically, this is a Games Workshop hobby. I think there's a lot of rules. There's just so many. I've got so much paint on my hand, I do apologize. There's just so many confusing rules, how many books you need, etc. It's not a simple game to understand how to get into. I think the barriers to entry are quite high, and that both in terms of hobby and in terms of rules. I just feel like more could be done to make it a little bit more inclusive. And I think inclusivity is better than exclusivity, trying to have a hobby barrier saying hey, look, if you can't be bothered doing this, you're not coming in. I feel like we should be open to the idea of getting more and more people, because that means you can get more and more games and we get more diversity in games, etc. Being more popular is good, basically. And then you've got the also issue of we talked about time for the hobby kind of thing. Time is a commodity in itself, especially for people with adult lives kind of thing. But the miniatures are already expensive. Then you have to invest in painting them. Then you have to go paint them. And then where are you going to play? In the UK specifically, I know there's not necessarily a problem in the US, but this room is tiny. I could literally probably touch both walls with I might even be able to touch every single wall in here without even moving too much. But you need space to play it. You need a 6 by 4 foot space just for the game, and then you need space around it. So that's not unique to Games Workshop, obviously, Legion 6x3, etc. But space is an issue. D&D, you can literally do it at your kitchen table. Board games, kitchen table. Tabletop card games, kitchen table. There has been a trend towards these skirmishy games 40k's, Kill Team, Warcry, Marvel Crisis Protocol, etc. Super Fancy Ball. I think we are going to just be right, we're going to try and keep our hobby on a kitchen table size board because we sort of need it to be. What happens with 40k, etc. I don't know. I think essentially they tried Kill Team, and Kill Team's super popular, but it doesn't ever seem like Kill Team's going to replace 40k. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. So space is a commodity in itself. And I think I've lost my mouse, so I'm trying to look at my notes. The other forms of tabletop games have had surges in popularity in, let's say, recent years, but I think Magic the Gathering might have been early 2000s when it blossomed. It's still reasonable, it's still popular now. I'm not trying to say it's not. Maybe having a second window, a third window, a fourth window, what have you. But and there's, other YouTube channels or industries have come along. We've got balls and spiky bits, etc., but they're not necessarily, and when I say in the same league, I just mean in terms of popularity, not in terms of quality. we don't have like a Geek and Sundry pushing it forward. Like Geek and Sundry obviously do touch a little bit on wargaming. I know I've seen Terry's like videos on terrain, etc. Although I'm not sure she works there anymore, but whatever. We don't have that kind of we don't have the RPG show that they have, the Critical Role. Like we don't have that, which was getting watched by thousands of people on Twitch. Like that doesn't happen. And again, that's not because there's not quality stuff. GW themselves put out quality streamed games on their Twitch, so like we have quality games, but then maybe we have to look at the game itself, whether or not that's inviting enough. And then you've got stuff like Watch It Played for board games. He also does war games occasionally, but really nice to watch, very professional. Shut up, sit down and doing reviews. No pun included, do reviews. Now reviews in wargaming doesn't really make sense because let's say Marvel Crisis Protocol, like you can go online now and see reviews, right? But how many games have those people played? Have they played 10 games? No, not really. I'd be very surprised if some of them are unboxing it and calling it a review, which is fine because we sort of have to in this industry. I'm not trying to throw shade, shade, drag reference. But you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to like cause trouble there. I just think to do a proper review, really, we'd have to wait 6 months. But by the time you've done 6 months in the future, nobody wants to hear that. Like, I'm guilty of that. Like, I played a game, 2 games of Warcry, whatever it was, and then I came on, I was like, is it any good? Really, you can't tell. I think I actually did an okay. I still stand by everything I said in that point, actually. But, it can be hard to really review a war game. So we're not going to get reviews in that sense, but I just feel like we've not had a version of that's come along and been good for like media, websites, etc. We've not had that cultural collaboration, conglomeration where we've actually then hit the next stratosphere. So 40k is obviously wildly popular as well. So if you do make changes, you run the like the universe itself is really popular on YouTube. People talking about the lore, its history and stuff. And so the game is really popular. So it's weird that I say that it's also off-putting. But my point is that the universe is really liked, or just not neutral enough for neutral people. So that I think is the core principle here. And I think maybe another game that's more general could come along. I think like the Star Wars Legion, I still think like in 5 years, 6 years time, if that keeps going, something like that could hit it. However, I think maybe the space is the issue. I think stuff like Warcry, Kill Team, Super Fantasy Brawl, Marvel Crisis Protocol, the games where they're very small but still tactically interesting, really I think is where the future should be. And one of them could become like the killer game that really like changes things. Now there's hope in there. Like I don't want to say that the YouTubers and stuff like that, we've never hit those quality levels. Like you've got Blackjack Legacy pulling out like delicious quality videos on all sorts of things. We've got Play on Tabletop battle reports for 40k, and they're absolutely exquisite. I think I've spoken about them before. I think they could easily be on TV. Like really, that is absolutely super nice. You've got people like in the UK, Broadsword Wargaming. I know his quality is obviously very high. He's doing like bat reps for not 40k, but well, maybe 40k at some point. He did Kill Team and he did like a Lord of the Rings one. But there is quality stuff in the UK, not necessarily on this channel, but there's quality stuff. I said the UK. In wargaming, but it just doesn't feel like we're going to hit that tipping point anytime soon where we have a proper boom in wargaming. And as I said, like I don't feel like the boom will happen with 40k at the forefront of the genre. For those reasons, like, I think really it comes down to the fact that the universe is just, you either really like it or you're either not bothered or it's not neutral enough for you to want to play a game in that universe. And I think wargaming as a whole has a problem with time and scale and space and all that kind of stuff, confusing rules, barriers to entry, etc. But some of them aren't necessarily unique to 40k, so it's a little bit weird to bring up, except stuff like obviously it's a big scale wargaming instead of a small scale wargame. But that's my point. I don't know if anybody will agree with me. I don't blame Games Workshop for this in any way, shape or form. Like, that's the game that they've made, and that's the universe they designed. People love that universe. My question is whether or not we can have like D&D. It's to all intents and purposes, it's sort of like general neutral fantasy. Some D&D people will be like, no, it's not, Jay, you're an idiot, which is true, but bear with me. Like, it's neutral enough that people can just sort of go like, yeah, all right, I can play that. If you're interested in mages and dwarves and stuff and elves, like people used to have like a dislike, like the general public used to have a dislike about that, but like geeky culture has sort of become more and more commonplace, but we've not yet like transitioned this geeky culture increase, I think, to a proper wargaming increase. And it could be the reasons I laid out. There might not be. Maybe it's just something else. But you know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I am really interested in your thoughts. Do you think like I guess whether or not you agree or disagree with me, if I just say to you, what do you think is holding wargaming back, and is it actually being held back, like, or is it just as popular as it could ever be? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would be very intrigued in reading those. Oh, that's the end of the video. That is the end of the video. I hope you found it interesting. One of my longer videos. So I'm off. Have a beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.